everyone. Wow, that's nice. Welcome to we're going to discuss today about Generative AI Revolution. Our goal with Ashu is going to be to share a bit more on where we think this is useful applied to mobile marketing and to be as practical as possible. We'll have two parts, giving you some of the use case we're seeing and actual application. And then we'll have a part where I will interview Ashu, who is really an expert on the technical side, right, on how to leverage Gen AI in mobile marketing. So let's start giving you a bit of background. So about myself, I think I've been marketing mobile apps and games since 2011, so 12 years, I guess. Did a lot of mobile games marketing, but 2 games as #1 top grossing in the US and in Europe. And then I scaled, and that's where we met with Ashu. We scaled Smart News from 200 million to 2 billion in valuation. And in the US, we became larger than CNN, Fox News, and other key news app and IPs. And now I'm set up in a new mobile game studio that's building games using generative AI called Titan AI. And Ashu, I'll pass it to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashu. And I'm a data scientist. I worked in a few different industries like real estate, news, and fintech. Off late, I've been dabbling my hand in generative AI. I use it to write code, poems, and make art. Hopefully, there is a lot of applications in generative AI for ads and hope to be a part of the revolution.
So today, we'll not discuss about ChatGPT and all the copy-driven applications. So, when we cross paths with Ashu and Jessica was here as well, our core thesis is to say there is a lot of copy-centric application for different type of business, especially B2B, but our true expertise around B2C, right? So the way we're seeing it is like, we see generative AI as having the largest potential when you're combining visual elements, right? Whether it's static or video with copy. And I always remember this study that Meta did, right? It was a few years ago where they found that in terms of capability to predict a click, copy was less than 8% of what mattered in a user to make a decision to click or not to click, right? The image and or video was really what was defining the capability for a user to say, I'm going to click and then install the app. So ultimately, we think that makes a difference because you have an audience, whether it's within the US, right, or globally, that's really diverse. And therefore, right, you need to really leverage generative AI to essentially maximize your business, lifetime value. We believe you could attract a lot of new audiences, but as well lower the CAC. So you will see a lot of conferences where they're discussing a lot of vendors. This is not how we approach the landscape, right? Instead of saying, oh, you could use A and B and C and stitch those things together, we think the tools, a lot of them ultimately are built around the same core technologies, right? They have different use cases. And so, I've used a lot of the copy side and so on. We think what matters truly is your capability to understand those use cases. Then, different tools have better or worse application, and we could go into that part of the discussion during the question and with Ashu, but we're not going to discuss and give you a recommendation about which tool to use until the Q&A part. So first use case to share, right? And again, Titan AI, the studio is set up to do a lot of games for very different underrepresented audiences. So our first game just got approved last night by Apple. Essentially a game targeting the K-pop audience, both in the US and beyond, right? And so one thing that we worked on was to leverage it in terms of the persona building. When you're trying to build persona to understand the different consumer segment to target, right? You need to be able to effectively convey to your engineers, convey to your product team who you're going after as a marketer. So we think that the capability to essentially generate images that represent those personas, right, and embody them is extremely important. The second aspect is, when you're doing brainstorming, and in this case, that was a brief for UI UX designer that's based out of Philippines. And we're discussing about building a game for the audience in Mexico that will take the opposite stance to Temple Run. Temple Run is essentially a white guy who takes away treasures, right, from the Aztecs. And so in our tech, we're like, hey, how about the opposite perspective where they're defending their own treasures? And so we needed to give her, since she wasn't familiar with this part of history and this part of the world, sort of frame of reference of things we don't want and things we want. And in this case, we use them to say, hey, this is some of the archetypes we want to go for, right? This is a look and feel of the product. And of course, this is applied to a game, but you could do it very easily as well for other type of mood board and inspiration that you're providing to your designers. So this is the first step, because often right at the beginning, you need to define who you're going for and what is the look and feel of your product. Second application in terms of generative AI, and this is a live example. We just started actually the A/B test. More and more, some of the tools, we'll discuss more about Midjourney versus Stable Diffusion versus the rest, got better and better at generating icons. And with the right prompt, you could really get to a point where we're not even using a human designer anymore to retrieve those. We just resize and hop, we test them. And that gives you a lot of agility, right, in terms of icon A/B test. Around screenshots as well, you have the capability to really quickly, if you want to do screenshot multivariate test, right, on Google Experiments, for example, or any other platform you're using, you have the capability to generate those quick concepts in a much more agile manner, where, again, you don't necessarily need to go and assess whether your creative team has the capability and bandwidth to build those assets or go out and find a designer. You could do it, generate those assets at the right size, and start testing. And so I do feel like ultimately, given all my past where I had some time to wait, right, a week or 2 weeks until we iterated enough on the screenshot to be able to test them, I feel it gives you a unique edge if you're leveraging generative AI in this workflow. So now going to the user acquisition, right, which is a lot of my expertise is a bit on the ASO, but a lot on the user acquisition side. First example, and that's one of the proof of concept company we're partnering with, Smart News, which used to be our company, right, for the three of us, is they wanted to really expand to specific cities and target specific cities to grow their audience in those specific cities, because they assessed that there was an opportunity since the audience in those different cities were more engaged than other cities in the US. Right, so the capability to say, hey, that's fine, we're going to take iconic monuments and so on and target them. That could apply if, let's say, you have to expand your app past the US, right? You could really make culturally relevant creatives very easily with Gen AI. And so that's another key use case. Could be state-specific, right, if you stay within the US. And just make those a lot more likely to convert. Drawing from the Smart News experience, we've noticed on Facebook, when we're doing those hyperlocal ads, that overall we're getting 2 or 3 times higher click-through rate versus the generic national ads, right? National news, entertainment news, and so on. Things about your community and things you connect with visually just tend to generate a lot more clicks. Yet another example, user acquisition. So Fabulous is an app that's essentially all about personal development, teaching you good habits and so on. And in this case, one of their hypotheses, or one thing they've noticed in the data, right, is they needed to expand with students, right? And they knew that students, right, were the core time where they're looking to install their app and competitors' app was during the time that they were heading into exam season. It was hard to sleep well, to eat well, all those things. And they wanted to expand. But of course, again, when you have an in-house team, often there is 10 other priorities you're competing with. So they needed to say, hey, how could we go and expand the student demographic? And so that's one thing that, again, Gen AI allows you to do, right? You could quickly go in and test if this new demographic makes sense or not without mobilizing your creative team around it. Special event. Having shipped all those games and apps, there is key things, right? The 4th of July, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, and so on, right? Depending on the demographics you're targeting, you want to be present. In this case, for DoorDash, right? Mother's Day was one of the axes. Initially, they had those very flat, I guess you could say, creatives, where it's just like some flowers, a box of chocolate, send something to your mom for Mother's Day. They were okay, but they were not conveying truly, for example, the emotion, right? What ultimately you want if you're gifting something to your mom is, make her happy, right? And this is, again, Gen AI creatives, right? Where simply you're able to convey the happiness, not just the gift. And this is another type of things, right? We're heading into 4th of July season, and then there is back to school season. And you could imagine, right, there is a lot of opportunities globally. I always take the example of a lot of the mobile gaming companies out of China. They understand that Ramadan is very big for the Middle East market. And they were doing a great job building campaigns around that. Most US-based or Europe-based companies were not doing that. And as a result, they were not expanding in MENA as fast as the Chinese-based company. So that's another example, right? You could be really culturally relevant for this special event in this part of the world. Or Bastille Day, if you're aiming at the French market. And last but not least, this is some example of ads for a Web3 company called The Sandbox. Was, I think, 4 or 5 billion in valuation. And so they needed to sort of up-level, right, their game in terms of creatives. They were using screenshots, doing a little bit of post-processing, and they have a pretty big creative team in South America as well of 25 designers. But at the same time, they can't afford to necessarily go to those big fancy agencies, right? That's another way to go for generative AI. Generative AI is really good at different type of art. In this case, their game is a Minecraft-like, if you want, type of game. So they needed a very specific execution. It's called voxel art, right? Those like blocky little thing you're seeing. You have with Gen AI really a lot of versatility in the way you could express your brand. And so I think that gives you as well the freedom to try those new directions that you may not have considered before because they were way too expensive to try, right? I used to have a game that was like a 3D game, but that was targeting the anime audience. So to build an anime trailer that's hand-drawn will cost you upwards of $200,000. So not exactly something you could try easily, right? You have to commit, and it's expensive, and it takes weeks to get done. Versus if you want to try this direction, now you could do it and very quickly achieve great results. So this is just some of the examples. And now I think we'll go into a quick Q&A with Ashu, and then we'll go and take your questions as well. So there is really 3 big platforms, right, when it comes to generating visuals. You have DALL-E, which is same company, OpenAI, that did ChatGPT. You have Stable Diffusion, which is from Stability AI, and Midjourney. So Ashu, if you were to describe the strengths and weaknesses of each, which one is the most adapted to mobile marketing use case, and where is it coming from, what we're seeing on the screen?
Yeah, I can maybe talk about a few different dimensions to evaluate these models. For example, you can say, is a model open source or closed source? Why would this be important? Because if a model is open source, there'll be a big developer community who's adopting these models, and they're trying to tweak it and make it better. So these models can quickly become something spectacular in a matter of few weeks. The other dimension could be the access and price. So does this company have an API access or not? If they have an API access, you can easily programmatically access it and scale it quickly. If they don't have it, you cannot scale it easily. Maybe another subjective dimension could be how good looking are the creatives. So based on these 3 things, like Stable Diffusion is open source, the other 2 are not. Stable Diffusion has an API access, DALL-E has an API access, Midjourney does not have an API access. But the third one, which I would say is subjective and probably the most important one, which looks beautiful and is easy to use, I think Midjourney is pretty easy to use. But this is a very fast evolving field, and every day there are interesting models coming out, and very soon these models could be replaced by something even better.
Yeah. And just for reference, right, what we're describing here is like all of that is from Midjourney with like some post-processing and so on. But that gives you an idea of like the versatility and quality, right, that you could achieve. There was, I always say, no human designer was hurt in the process, in the extent that it wasn't done with a human designer at all in the process. Cool. So, Midjourney has the edge in terms of visual quality. Now, how about, there might be some people in the audience who are using playable ads, animated ads, right? Things that are not video, but they're not static anymore. Is it like easy to leverage the same tool to generate this type of ads, or is it still like, not there yet?
I think there are tools already existing for us to make interactive ads and playable ads. I think what right now we see ads as a static video or a static image. I'm hoping that is going to change soon and there'll be more fun type of ads. One example that I can think of is, let's say you're trying to do clothes shopping. It would be pretty cool to see yourself in that piece of cloth that you're trying to see, instead of seeing it on a hanger or a generic model. You can go even one step further to say, I'm trying to shop for a piece of clothing for this event or this particular vacation that I'm going to, and you can also overlay the background to see how you might fit there. So this is one step. There can be so many more imaginative ways that people are going to come up with, and hopefully as an industry we can adopt interactive ads soon.
Yeah. But so for now, at least it's realistic to expect to say, hey, what we're showing is static, but your level of confidence is like doing those light GIF animations, right, and so on. This is relatively easy. I mean, it's some work, but it's not far off.
Yes, there are tools for that, yeah.
Okay. And then now the question, because I have a lot of friends in mobile games, right? That's where I used to come from. How about Gen AI video? That would be cool to have a 10, 15 seconds, mobile video ads. And is it already ready, or is it more in the future?
When it comes to like 5-second videos, I think what is currently capable, as far as I know, is if there is an image, you can try to create some sort of a video aspect to it on a few dimensions or a few different perspectives. What is also currently possible is you can stitch together a series of images and sort of do something like an Instagram reel format, which a lot of people do get engagement. But a full-fledged video, automated video, it's not there yet. It's a lot complicated than just generating a static single image. So I would say no if you want a very strong answer for it. But you can hack your way into making generative AI videos, but it probably won't yield the same results that a static image might yield as compared to a static generated by an artist. Probably an automated generated via AI video will not give you the same results.
Yeah, and to share a little bit, having chatted with a friend with a stable diffusion, I think some of their challenges is compute cost, right? Generating a video is like a lot of images ultimately. And so for them, right, of course, if they were like, hey, I could generate a video for you, it would cost you $10 per video, and you probably will have a hit rate success of like 20%, right? You might be like, oh, I don't know if I want to pay all this money and take this risk. The second issue they have is consistency. For Gen AI, it's hard to understand that image A and B and C, the human eye will process them together. And so therefore, they need to have some sort of consistency. So think of it, right? Like if a character doesn't have a hat in image 1, 2, 3, you can't suddenly have an ad appear out of nowhere. And this is something that we, as humans notice when we watch a TV show. If there is a scene, right, where there is no consistency, we'll notice it easily. So it's one thing, it's hard to teach that to their system right now. Cool. Well, so I think, one of the biggest questions a lot of you guys might be asking yourself is like, should I go and just buy something off the shelf? Should I try to build it in-house? So if you had to arbitrage, right, on the build versus buy, like what are some of the parameters you think the audience should consider?
For generative AI image tool kind of a thing, I would say if your core business runs on content generation and you need to use it at extreme scale and you need to develop a deep sense of expertise, it makes sense to like build it. But if you are something like a small business who just wants to leverage easy to produce ads and see if this kind of creatives work for your platform, even other than ads, just to use it as assets in products, it totally makes sense to just buy or use a third-party tool. There is a sort of a scary running joke among the community which says that everything is prompt engineering in generative AI. So it's always good to borrow that expertise from somebody else.
Yeah, great. Cool. So now we'll turn it to you guys and take questions, that you guys might have on how to apply it to your own business, right? Because there's all types of business. You've seen some very large one like DoorDash, right? And you've seen some, well, I guess Sandbox pretty big, but there is as well like smaller businesses. And again, I think for now we're seeing use case across the spectrum. I think where there is a bit less experience is around monetization and re-engagement of the users, but we think there is a use case as well for those type of use case. Anybody? Question? Or it's the end of the day and it's like so long.
There are research papers coming out every week. I'm personally not like super impressed by any of them. They all technically do generate video, like it is a motion picture. But I would say, like right now, if I show you two images of a AI generated image and somebody that took a photograph, you probably cannot tell. So I would say the benchmark has to be pretty high. Even though there's technically it's possible to generate videos, it's currently not there. Maybe six months to 1 year. I'm pretty excited about the gaming studios. I feel like they'll be the ones who'll be pioneering this technology into making it available to everybody. So as long as people love games, I'm sure videos will come out soon.
Yeah, I think one of the additional challenge versus what I've described, right, the whole compute cost and consistency is as well like the style, right? Style consistency versus your own product. And for example, for mobile game company, it's really important that it looks like your own game, right? Is something that is not easy to teach to a system. It's like, hey, Clash of Clans doesn't look like, I don't know, whatever other Game of War, right? It's not something that is so easy to make sure that your system understand it. And that's why currently I think there's still human designers working on those videos. But yeah, 6, 9, maybe 12 months, but at least it's around the corner. So it's good to start somewhere. It could be with static and then, expand to video. And that's at least the plan.
Copyrights, is that ever going to be an issue with anything coming from you?
So that I've consulted, since we're building games based on Gen AI, I've consulted our law firm. And they brought a guy from Austin that is, working with OpenAI and a few others. For now, some of those big platforms got in hot water with artist collectives, right? But there is no court case that went through and where, for example, right, Stable Diffusion or those guys, Stability AI and so on, had to pay anything. So for now, it's still pending court case. And so their court take is that to de-risk, what you always want to check, especially if there is a human being, is like make sure you go to Google Image, do a quick reverse image search. And at this point, I think in all the image generated, there is nothing that matches an actual human being because, image rights could be a tricky matter, especially if you're doing lookalike of some celebrity. And so in that aspect, you have low risk. In the aspect that unless, again, you're a super big company where going after you will be a good, useful thing. There is not really a lot of chances that people are capable of going after you at this time, right? It is possible, and there is some discussion in Europe on the legal side that, for example, a little bit like GDPR, right? Europe was like, privacy matters. We're going to force you to ask people for every single categories if you're tracking them. It is possible that some countries adopt things that make it, well, not impossible, at least very difficult to use Gen AI, right? Because you can't track and say, the percentage of assets that was used for A and B and C. But for now, at least it's a free market and there is no legal issues, no big legal risk, right? There is always a low legal risk for everything you do anyway, but there is no big legal risk or problem.